Hey kiddos! So today I want to talk to you a little bit about graphs and data. So graphs, what are they and why in the world do we use them? Well, graphs are basically just a picture of some data. Data? What in the world is data? Who have ever heard of little kids talking about data? Well, data is just information. It's just a science and math word that we use for information. And in math, we're going to use it with our graphing, we're going to use it to talk about numbers and information. So, we're going to talk about why we use graphs. So, graphs are usually used because it's a really interesting and quick way to look at some numbers and compare them. And I'm going to show you what I mean. I'm going to show you 3 different kinds of graphs, and then we're going to practice a little with making a bar graph. So the first kind of graph I'm going to show you is a pictograph. So I'm going to wake up my computer here. This is called a pictograph, and you can imagine why it might be called pictograph. That word picto might remind you of the word picture. So a pictograph is a graph that uses little pictures to tell us information. Now, the title of this one is The Number of Red Boxes Sold. So this was a graph that they wanted to show how many boxes they had sold on different days of the week. Now, I want to show you something kind of cool about graphs. You can look at this right away without knowing any more information, and you can tell which day they sold the most red boxes, can't you? Which day of the week? Can you read those okay? I'm going to bring it up a little closer. Yeah, it's Friday. And why did you pick Friday? Well, of course, because that has the most little red boxes on it. So a pictograph is using little pictures to represent numbers, and it is showing you that a certain number of boxes was sold each day, and we can right away, just from a glance, look at a graph and know what had the most and what had the least. So you've told me that Friday they were the most sold. Which day did they have the least sold? Yeah, Saturday. How many did they sell on Saturday? Just one, right. And usually these pictographs are also going to have a key down at the bottom. You know how we've used keys before to know information? Usually it would have a key and tell us how many boxes each of these little pictures represents. Now, since there's no key, I'm going to guess that in this case, the red boxes each equal 1 box. But sometimes if we had big numbers, we might say each little picture represented 100 boxes or 1,000 boxes. But no matter what, it's a lot easier to read this by just looking at a picture than it would be if we wanted to look at a whole bunch of numbers and look at all the zeros and look at all the numbers. It's a lot quicker to compare by looking at a picture. So that's a pictograph, and it's pretty easy to read, right? Now I'm going to show you a different kind of graph. This is called a pie graph. And why do you think they would call it a pie graph? Well, of course, because it's round, shaped like a pie. So we used some round things when we were talking about fractions, but what do you notice about this? Yeah, all the parts are not equal. Well, that's on purpose because this pie is not supposed to be showing fractions. It's supposed to be showing us information. It's showing us some data. So what it's showing us is what people's favorite pizza toppings were. So they went around and asked some people what their favorite pizza toppings were. And our key tells us which color goes with which topping. And then they made a graph to show a visual way for you to understand the data or the information. So they wanted to show you a real quick way to glance at that graph and know what was the favorite topping. So when you glance at that pie, what color has the biggest piece of that pie? What color? Green, yeah. So I'm going to look over here at my key and I'm going to see that green equals pepperoni. So I know that the most people voted for pepperoni when they voted for their favorite topping. And now let's look and see what the other colors were. Which color had the least popular or the least number of votes, the smallest number of votes? Yeah, you're going to look for the piece of the pie that is the smallest. So it's this color right here, which is kind of a reddish color. Let's look and see what that goes with. Supreme. So Supreme got the least number of votes. Good. And then you see the orange has the next biggest piece. That stands for sausage. And the purple had the next biggest piece, the cheese. But the reason people use graphs is instead of giving you a bunch of numbers and saying this many people voted for cheese, this many people voted for pepperoni, this many people voted for Supreme, all they do is just show you this picture and let you see by the size of the pieces which were the biggest numbers. So the biggest numbers had the biggest part of the pizza. So the most votes was for pepperoni. Good. Okay, now let's look at one more example. If I can get this one to close. Oh, I'm acting like this has a touch screen, which it does not. Sorry. Okay, back to it. There we go. That is a bar graph, and that's what we are using in kindergarten. And a bar graph is the same thing again. It's a picture showing us some information. It's a picture showing us some numbers. So if you looked at this, you can see the title is Nicest Fruit. And here's a bar graph, and on the side it tells me the number of people that voted for which fruits were the nicest. So right away, look at that bar graph and tell me which color shows the most votes. Yes, the blue. And why did you say blue? Well, yeah, because it's the tallest. So the longest bar, and I'm going to use the word longest instead of tallest, and I'll tell you why in a minute. The longest bar, tallest bar here is the blue one, and I see that that means blueberry. So blueberry is what that got the most votes for the nicest fruit. Which fruit got the least number of votes, the lowest? The color is purple, and then you look right below, and that tells you what purple stands for, and that was the grapes. The grapes got the least number of votes. Now, what if I wanted to know exactly how many votes? I would just need to use my scale, which is the numbers over here. I would need to see how high up the bar goes. So the easiest way to do that would be to use a straight edge. So I'm going to use a straight edge. I'm going to use a ruler, and I'm going to lay it down here and show you that that green bar goes right to what number? I'm going to use my finger to point. 25. So I know 25 people voted for kiwi fruit. Let me slide down and look and see how many people voted for the yellow, which is banana. I'm going to line right up with the bar, and I see that the yellow lines right up with the number 10. So I know 10 people voted for banana. But the idea with a graph is for you to be able to glance at it and know what has the most and what has the least. So if I were sitting in a room in a company and they wanted to know which fruit the people thought was the nicest, they might flash this up on the screen and show all of us, and right away we would know that blueberry was the most popular and that apple was the next most popular. It got the next most votes, the second most votes, and I know that because it's the second tallest bar. Okay, so let's get to you guys making graphs. So let's talk about some data, okay? So I'm going to close that, and I'm going to show you that I've got some data here on my board. Remember, data is just a fancy word for information, and in this case it's numbers. And I am going to say that I had a little vote in my neighborhood and asked what people's favorite ice cream flavors were. And so I gave them choices. I gave them the choice of chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, and mint chocolate chip. And then I got everybody to vote. And then as people voted, I made tally marks. So you know how we've done tally marks at school when we were doing voting for things. So I made tally marks to show how many people voted for each flavor. So let's review my data. How many people voted for chocolate? Look right over here. Yep, 4 people voted for chocolate. I'm going to put a number 4 because I like to total my tally marks right next to it. Okay, how many people voted for vanilla? Yeah, do you remember how to read tally marks? So when you see the crossed out one, you know that whole chunk is 5. So 5 and 1 more makes 6. Good. How many people voted for strawberry? 3. Great. And how many people voted for mint chocolate chip? 8. Okay, so I have 5, 6, 7, 8. So those are my totals. 4 voted for chocolate, 6 voted vanilla, 3 voted for strawberry, and 8 voted for mint chocolate chip. Now, I want to make a bar graph for that information. So, I printed off a blank bar graph, and I've still got my data here. I'm going to keep flashing it in here when we need it. And I'm going to make a bar graph. So, the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to organize it. Now, I wanted to show you when we were talking about longer and shorter and taller for our bars, I wanted to show you that we can also have a horizontal bar graph. And that means that the bar is going to go across the page instead of going vertically up and down. So watch how I'm going to organize this. I'm going to write chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, mint chocolate chip. So those are my 4 flavors that people voted on. And I would write right here when I was filling out my bar graph, I would explain to somebody who was looking at it what these words are. They're ice cream flavors. Good. Now, at the bottom where the numbers are, those are the numbers or the boxes that are going to show how many people voted for each of those flavors. So I'm going to write down here votes. So that tells everybody that these numbers represent votes, the number of people that voted for them. Okay, so now I'm ready to graph my data. So I'm going to glance back at my data. So how many people voted for chocolate? Yep, 4. So that means that beside the word chocolate, I need to fill in 4 boxes to represent those 4 votes. And you see how instead of going vertically, making a tall bar graph, I'm going to make a horizontal or long bar graph. It's going to go across the page. All right, there are my votes for chocolate. Now, I'm going to pick a different color for each flavor because I think that makes my bar graph easier to read. But if you wanted to do it all in one color, that would still be okay. Let's look at our data. How many for vanilla? 6. Good. So I'm picking a different color and I'm going to fill in 6 boxes to show my votes for vanilla. Tell me when to stop. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Beautiful. Thank you. Okay, now next is strawberry. How many people voted for strawberry? 3. Good. Okay. I'm going to make a mark where I'm stopping. Sometimes that helps me keep from making a mistake on my coloring. Okay, 3 votes for strawberry. And then how many votes for mint chocolate chip? 8. Okay. Here's a color I haven't used. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Why do you think I did those little marks? Yep, that helps me keep track of how many boxes I'm going to color in. Don't think I'm scrabbling. I'm not. I'm still in the lines. You know how I am about a scrabble color. Goodness. Okay. Done. Okay. There is my bar graph. Now, let me ask you some questions about our data. So, glancing at this bar graph, you don't even have to know the numbers. You can just look at how long the bars are. What was the most popular flavor? What had the most votes? Yep, mint chocolate chip. Good. And I see now that I used kind of a very similar color. I'm not sure it was the same crayon, but I'm going to make this a little darker so we can really tell. There. Okay. What had the least number of votes? Strawberry. Right. It only had 3 votes. And so then how many votes did vanilla have? Yep, 6 votes. And then how many votes did chocolate have? 4. Good. Now, we could actually do some math with the information from a graph also. So if I asked you a question and I said, what's the difference between the number of people that voted for chocolate and the number of people that voted for strawberry? Did you hear that word difference? Yeah, what does that word difference mean? What kind of math would I use? Subtraction. You're right. So if I wanted to find the difference between the number of people that had chocolate, that voted for chocolate, and the number of people that voted for strawberry, I would have to subtract. So I'm going to take the bigger number, the chocolate, and I'm going to subtract the number of people that voted for strawberry. And that's an easy one. So what's the difference between those two numbers? 1. The difference between the number of people that voted for chocolate and the number of people that voted for strawberry is 1. Good. What if I asked you this question? How many people voted in all? Oh my gosh, how in the world would I find that number? Yeah, I would need to count up all of the votes. Good. So I could do it as a math sentence, or I could just count them. So I'm going to do it both ways, okay? So I'm going to start with a math sentence. 4 plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 plus 1, 2, 3. 3 plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8. Good grief, Miss Bennett, you can't add all those. Yeah, I can. I can add them all up. I'm going to start with 4. And I'm going to say 4 plus 6 is 10. And then plus 3 more. 11, 12, 13. Plus 8. I'm up to 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Okay. And now let's see if I was right. Let's count up all the boxes we colored. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Ding, ding, ding. 21 people voted in my neighborhood poll. Good. So we can use graphs to do all kinds of math. They show us a picture of our numbers, and we can play around with the numbers and figure out some more information that we want to know. Great job today. Okay, let's go practice some bar graphs.